My kids and I took a Matthew Peech project and decided to make it for their father for Father's Day. Come with us as I teach them some basic woodworking skills. And let them know how you think they did down in the comments. So this is the wood we're going to use. This is walnut, and it's live edge. So we're going to actually cut part of this off because we don't want all the cracks and everything. And I don't want to deal with epoxy too much. So we're going to use this edge and cut it along here, and then we're going to cut it in half. So then it's not as thick. We don't need it that thick. Okay. So I am going to set it up. We'll see what you think about cutting it. If you want me to cut this first one, I could do that. Okay. Okay, so this already has a flat edge right here where it's already been cut. So we're going to reference off of that from the fence. This is pretty safe. It doesn't rock, so we don't have to worry about it getting bound or anything on the saw. So let's see, we probably want it, I'm just going to eyeball it where we want it cut. I'm going to use the miter gauge because if we put it up against here, because of the way this is spongy, it's bouncy. If we put it up against here, it could bind because this moves. So I'm not going to use the fence, I'm just going to use this. So when it would be really nice actually to have one of those extensions on the hair, but that's okay. So
yeah, you can cut this part. I'm not dealing with this part.
That's fine. I'll do it. I figured that much. I'm gonna let you use the bandsaw. That'll be easy, and it's not gonna scare you this time. It's not gonna like pop off or anything. It's a really good bandsaw. So I'll probably gonna want it up there. Okay, so I'm gonna set it here. I'm gonna raise the blade. So you want the blade just above the wood. So that way, if something happens, your hand comes across, then you're not taking off your entire fingers, pretty much. It's a saw stop, it shouldn't happen anyway, but you don't want, some guys will have it like way up here, but you know, your hand goes through that and your hand's gone. So it mitigates the risk. You do want some of it out because when it's clearing the wood, when it's cutting, it's using these gullets to take that extra wood out. So you don't want it so buried that it can't do that. So you do want it above just a little bit. Okay. Probably cut it about right there. I think that'll be good. Okay, it's already on. Let's get our ear protection. I need to make one of those extensions for the miter gauge.
Here, I'll hold it up.
Thank you, that helps. Okay, now we need to cut it widthwise. We can get a different chunk out of there. Okay, so we want about half of this. We're gonna have to make this higher. So you unscrew here, and this has to be able to clear this entire board. So, but you want it as close to the board as you can because that keeps the blade from wandering. Just like that. Okay. If you put the board at the back like this, it's easier to see where it is, and then you can judge where you want it. If you're, this doesn't have to be precise, so we can just kind of eyeball it on how thick we want it. There. About like that. I think that'll be good. Let me check one thing. Okay, stop, please. We're going to use these tacks, and I want to make sure that the tack isn't going to go all the way through.
Yeah, it went all the way through.
Yeah, all the way through the saw. There it is. Okay. So yeah, we got room. Plus the leather's going to be on there, so that's good. I just don't want the tacks to be poking to the other side. The more woodworking you can do without measuring, the better. Believe it or not. Did you ever think you'd hear that from a teacher? Don't measure. Don't use math. I don't like to use math. I don't have to. Okay, so we're gonna do it right there.
Do I like straight against the wall?
Straight against the bed.
Okay.
I'm more worried about that. Okay, I'll start it off for you. Okay, and you can use this. It'll probably make you feel better to use this to grab onto it once we get it through. Okay, and you want to keep your hands away from the blade at all times, right? So once it gets past here enough, it's usually when I grab it from the back end and start pulling it from the back end, because then my fingers are out of the way and I don't have to worry about my fingers. When you first start it, grabbing it from here and pushing it through, you're fine, because it's not going to be getting to your fingers anytime soon. So, but once you can get enough that you can get back here and start pulling it out, that's when I do that. Okay, so let me start it for you. Let me get my ears. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and start. Okay, so now we have our two boards. Looks pretty good. Probably use the inside of it for the front. Won't have to worry about as much epoxy. This has all the bug holes and everything in it. So, did pretty good. Let's see. Now this one's a bit thicker. Kind of a little awry right there, but that's okay. So let's not use the thin one. We'll use this thicker one, so we have more room. Pins. Okay, so now that that's all done, it's actually pretty smooth if you feel it. You don't want to feel it. You can't even tell it was cut with the saw. So we're gonna run it through the planer so we can clean up the site. Okay. This here moves the head up and down. Okay. So we need to move it up until this fits. And you want it to be somewhat tight, so it'll grab, the rollers will grab onto it when it goes through. Okay.
You Gen Xers are way too comfortable with these dangerous objects.
Huh?
You Gen Xers are way too comfortable with these dangerous objects.
Oh, I'm not comfortable with it. I have to be very careful.
Why experience?
Okay, so when you put it through, once it grabs, you could just kind of let it go. Okay, you don't want to get your fingers in there in any way. Okay, you should not take off a really big bite at first because we have it so low, but we're gonna have to keep lowering it to make it take off more wood. This is for your daddy for Father's Day.
I know.
That looks actually really good. Okay, so we need to dig some of this out.
Woodworking's just not my interests.
That's okay. But it's good skills to know, even though it's not interesting to you. So we're gonna dig some of this out. So go ahead and take that, dig that out.
Dig what out?
All the soft stuff right there. This is gonna be the back anyway, so this matches perfect. Get some of it out. It's all bug-eaten wood.
Oh.
Watch. Now, do you think it's a good idea to have this while you're pushing really hard and your fingers right there? There you
Well,
go.
that depends. How sharp is it?
It's very sharp.
Yeah, it's pretty sharp.
Okay, with a miter saw, you always make sure that since the handle's on the right-hand side, you use your right hand, or if you need to use the other side, you use your left hand on this side like this. Okay, you don't cross your hands over, because if you do that, you have the saw like right up against you. Okay. So this saw is kind of nice. It has a shadow line. So when you drop the saw down, you can actually see right where the blade's gonna go. So we know we can cut it right about there. And it will take all off that we need, just like that. So you want to keep your hands as far away from the blade as you can and push down and up against the bends. Make sure it's touching the fence right here. Okay, now to sand it. All nice, get all the icky stuff off of it. And we got to stay on the side here. Okay, so we have the leather we're gonna put on here. We'll probably put it on about there. And I think I want it to wrap around the side a little bit. So we can tack it down here and tack it here. So leave a little bit of that exposed. I'm showing my son how we're going to measure out the leather and where we are going to put all of the tack. I measured out where I wanted my starting holes and my ending hole to be, where the tacks were going to end up. I then used the calipers. I measured out the distance I wanted between each of the tacks and set it up with the calipers, and then used the sharp points of the calipers to mark out where each of the tacks will be. I showed him how to use the marking gauge along the length of the board so we will know where we want to place all of our tacks, and so they will be in a straight line. Having the groove from the marking gauge helps us be able to place the point of the caliper right where we want it. We can feel the actual groove in the board. At this point, he had ditched me because woodworking is not his thing. Okay, so I do not have a drill bit small enough for this, but with some experimentation, I can go ahead and drill just a little bit, and hopefully it won't split the wood when it goes in the rest of the way, when I drill it, or when I hammer in the rest of the way. Start there. Right here is my line. A little bit over an inch for each hole. So I needed to mark off on the leather where all the tacks were going to be, so I used the same calipers and made them slightly bigger so I can mark out where each of the tacks are going to go through the leather. You want them to be wider than what you did on the wood because they need to be looped so you can get your glasses through. I left some overhang on each side of the board with the leather because I want to be able to use some handmade tacks or nails in order to tack the ends down at the end grain of the board. Now it's time to make the edges pretty with a little bit of a chamfer. Okay, so the router just gives it a little bit more of a finished look. Look a little bit more on some of these holes, sand it down a little bit more. Still got some marks in here. CA glue is a great tool to use to fill in any gaps, and also if there's bug holes that might be a little bit soft, to harden those up. The black CA glue on the walnut looks really nice instead of using epoxy. If you have small holes, you can use that black CA glue and it works really well. Back to the router table for the last step before my girls can come in and help out. I wanted to put some keyhole grooves. That way we can hang the whole thing on the wall later on. So here I'm raising the bit to the correct height to make sure I have enough meat in the back of the board to be able to hold on to the screw and it not rip through the back of the board. This is probably the most painstaking part of the whole process of this, is figuring out where I want them. I've found that the easiest way to measure if you want 2 keyhole grooves is to decide an easy measurement between the centers of both of the holes. So 6 inches, 4 inches. So that way when somebody or yourself goes to hang it on the wall, you know that you just need your nails or your screws 4 inches apart or 6 inches apart, and it will go right on the wall. There's no weird measuring or trying to find out exactly where the holes are on the back of the board to transfer onto the wall. Here I'm trying to figure out my start and stop points. I want to make sure that they are the same on each side, so when they hang on the wall that my board isn't crooked. And I'm making little marks on my fence so I know where to stop, where to plunge, and how far to go for each of my keyhole slots. If you'd like a tutorial on exactly how to measure for this and how to make keyhole slots, let me know down in the comments and I can make a video. I was trying to figure out the whole time what my issue was and why it was so wobbly. It had been so long since I have done this. I forgot my stop blocks. There should be stop blocks on each side of this to help stabilize the board and to help me stop on one side or the other, and I had forgotten them. So my initial holes are a little wonky, but it worked out just fine. Here are my 2 girls coming in to help out and make Daddy's Father's Day present. We used Odie's oil. All the audio, for some reason, did not record, so their cute little voices talking about Daddy's present and them working on it, getting to use the hammer. Did not record, I'm sorry. But they had a ton of fun making this for Daddy and was so proud of themselves. Here we used a scrap piece of wood to put all the tacks in. I figured it'd be easier for the girls and for us if they were in initially, and we used the tips underneath the leather to fit into each of the slots and the holes that we had already made, and then hammer them in from there. I was surprised at just how hard this walnut was, even with the holes pre-drilled a little bit. These tacks did not want to go in, and we tried a couple different ways to try to hold on to it. I finally went and got a pair of jewelry pliers so that we could hold onto the tacks while we hammered them in. I ended up pre-hammering all of the tacks in for the girls because they tried and they just couldn't get them in on their own. And then they went back with the hammer and then finished them all. And here they are taking turns with the hammer, each hammering one of the tacks in. They had to make sure that it was fair, and each got a turn, one after the other. I took some handmade nails and used those to hammer the edge of the leather down to the end grain of the board. I then used my shop scissors to cut off the rest of the leather. I really need to get a pair of scissors and not have to use my shears every time I need to cut something. Testing the fit to make sure we can hang glasses in it, and everything looks pretty good. Thank you to Matthew Peech for the idea. This was a great project for my kids to work on for their dad. They really enjoyed it.